right. Let me see what we got here. Let me see. Doctor, what's going on, Doc?
Hello, Dr. Heavenly. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We are live right now. Right now. You in the clinic right now?
I am in the clinic right now. I am in the we have a few things going on. I have a patient that's getting a procedure done right now. So yes, ma'am, we are moving and
All right.
grooving.
So am I holding you up, or do you have to go back to the patient, or you got somebody, a nurse practitioner?
No, so this is the thing. When we do hair transplants, there's multiple steps to it, but there's an entire team that takes care of you. And so the most important part that I tell patients, obviously, is the initial consultation. It's the design. So, what I'm doing with the design is if you actually look at your hair, it actually comes out in these different angles, right? And so I have to recreate those angles and those directions when I do the stage that's called site creation. And
Okay, well,
so
let's start over. Wait a minute. So, guys, I got an extra special guest for y'all today. I always give y'all an introduction. Listen, and we're going to be bringing so much more information to you about hair replacement because it's so prevalent in our community. Today, we have an extra special guest. His name is Dr. Robert Drummond. You guys know him from Married to Medicine, LA. His beautiful wife, Shanique, right? I said Shanique, right?
yes,
And
ma'am.
beautiful kids. Robert, how are you today?
I'm doing phenomenal. I'm doing wonderful.
So can you tell the people a little bit more about yourself, the people that don't know Dr. Robert, and then we can get into what you do?
Absolutely. I have to. I'll give the brief version. My wife said I talk too much. So I'm originally from Jacksonville, Florida. I trained at Johns Hopkins. I received my MD and my PhD there. My
Mhm.
PhD is in immunology, cellular and molecular medicine, and I've done a lot in medicine. I spent 6 years in the Army, and so I was a battalion physician. I worked in the California Army National Guard for 6 years. I worked in urgent care, and I did that for about 10 years. Um, and I was the lead clinician and almost like a medical director for a couple of urgent cares here in Los Angeles. And so I did that for a few years, kind of got, disillusioned with corporate medicine, was looking for another way to practice medicine. I have a concierge medicine business on the side as well. I take care of some celebrities here in Los Angeles. And I was going to build that up. And my business partner came to me and said, Rob, have you thought about, hair restoration? And I said, absolutely not. I don't know much about it. And so he said, let's sit down. And so we talked, and we talked about the need, as you just mentioned, not just amongst everyone, but in the Black community in particular, and specifically in Black women. And, this cohort spends more time, energy, focus, and money on their hair than probably any other group in America. And they've been disenfranchised and kind of left out of a lot of the hair restoration world by a lot of the other facilities. And so we looked at it as a phenomenal opportunity to get involved and get into the hair restoration world. We've been doing that for a little over a year and a half now. And I will say that business has absolutely gone crazy recently.
That is great. That is great. So for somebody that does not have hair and needs replacement, what's different about your office that you offer that other people don't offer?
Wonderful question. So for us, and for everyone, I haven't mentioned it. So it's called Crown Hair Institute, right? And so for us, what we realized is that, let's say specifically if we're talking about the Black community, the reason that, and in the industry, we say curly hair. So individuals with curly hair, it's actually a very particular pattern of hair loss that is unique to that population. And so, you hear women all the time talking about the edges, right?
Right.
Well, hair loss that occurs there at the edges and here on the sides, we call it the frontal temporal region. It's happening largely due to hairstyles that put too much tension and stress on that area that leads to a phenomenon called traction alopecia. Now, what makes us different, to answer your question, what makes us different is that we specialize in curly hair. And what do I mean by specialize? There are certain techniques that you can use during a hair restoration or a hair transplant. One of them called the FUE procedure, follicular unit extraction, where we basically go, we take, under a microscope, we take small hair follicles from the back that are growing, and we place them to the area that needs it. In a lot of places, they don't do that procedure on curly hair. They just don't. Their technicians are not trained to do that on curly hair. They don't want to do that on curly hair because our hair is more difficult to work with. And flat out, a number of places will just tell patients, we don't do curly hair. We will
Wow.
not do hair transplant on curly hair. And so that's what I meant when I said it was an area where people had been disenfranchised. People had basically been left out and blocked out of this field that I think is so needed in our community. And so we saw that as an opportunity. We have the tools that are designed for curly hair. And that's what makes us different. Where everyone else runs away from, we actually became specialists in. And so I had another patient that, on my Instagram, they reach out. I love communicating. I love interacting with people. And they say, Doc, do you all do any procedures on individuals with sister locks or with traditional, dreadlocks? And so in my next post, I showed one of my patients that I actually done a hair transplant on with locks. And unlike every other place that would have made her shave her hair, we just worked around the locks. And so in my video, you can see like those beautiful, that new growth coming in around all of the locks, and she's going to have a wonderful, wonderful response. So that's what makes us different than
What's
everyone.
your website?
CrownHairInstitute.com.
Crown Hair Institute.com, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Crown Hair Institute. I think I spelled it right. I can't see. Let me see. Crown Hair Institute.com. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your at? Like, what's your Instagram?
Instagram is the same thing, at Crown Hair Institute.
Okay,
Same thing.
okay.
Same
Okay.
thing for TikTok. Same thing for
That's how you
YouTube.
do it. Make it easy, right? Crown.
Make it easy.
Seems like to me that name should have been gone, but it's not.
It's not. It's not. We loved it. I searched for a while to come up with a name that was unique. There's some hidden meaning into that also.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can get that. Is that it? Did I have it
That
right?
is it. Absolutely.
All right.
CrownHairInstitute.com and at Crown Hair Institute. That's our Instagram handle. And
So,
one of the things, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, if I'm missing hair, right? And a lot of people wear wigs and stuff like that, and I know it pulls your hair out. What's the first step to getting in your office? I know you're located in LA, but I know people fly in, correct?
We have had patients fly as far as Dubai to come and see us. That's my furthest patient. Right now, my patient that's here today, she flew in from New Orleans. Yes, a lot of our patients are flying in, and mainly because. Mm-hmm. So the first step is that they just give us a call. So the first step is to call the office, and then what will happen? You'll speak to one of the members of my staff, and they'll ask you kind of a little bit about what's going on in the background, and they'll ask for some photos. And once they ask for those photos, the reason they're asking for those photos is because I need to take a look and get an idea, and then I'll let them know kind of how many grafts we think we're probably going to need, just from a guesstimation. And then from there, we kind of get them a quote to let them know, hey, this is kind of where we are, because we do it by the graft. So let's say if you need 2,000 hair grafts, then we charge $4.25. You just multiply the 2,000 by the 425. That's it. That's how easy it is in terms of figuring out kind of what the price will be.
Okay, cool. So are there any contraindications for hair implants?
Oh, absolutely. So there are only certain patients that are going to be what we would call absolute contraindications to getting a hair transplant. So as I mentioned, part of what I'm doing is diagnosis first. And for a lot of patients, it's easy. For some patients, it's not so easy. And so if I do a diagnosis and we see something called scarring alopecia, right? So if you have a diagnosis of scarring alopecia, meaning, and there are certain conditions that cause that.
Burns?
It could be a burn. It could be a burn that could have scarred the tissue. Conditions called like FFA, frontal fibrosing alopecia. That's a type of scarring alopecia. CCCA, central centrifugal alopecia. That's a type of scarring alopecia, meaning the tissue underneath is fibrosed and damaged. Okay, the condition is caused that. That's typically not amendable to a traditional hair transplant. Also, the most common type of alopecia that people think of, alopecia areata, if that's active, okay? If it's active, meaning those white blood cells are still infiltrating and knocking out those hair cells, then that's not amenable to it. So those would be the contraindications to getting a hair transplant.
could they get it like a graft? Because like I know when people don't have bone in dentistry, we just do a bone graft. Is there a tissue graft or some kind of graft you can do to? No.
The person that discovers that is going to be an absolute billionaire.
Well, I done gave you something there, Doc.
It's the interesting thing is it's not as simple because what you're trying to do is you'd have to have those. They're not pluripotent, they're multipotent stem cells, right? So that gets back into the nerdy days that we had in school, right? And so, a pluripotent stem cell is a stem cell that can become anything.
Right.
A multipotent stem cell is a stem cell that's only going to go to a certain lineage. So underneath your skin, underneath your scalp and your hair, you have multipotent stem cells. That's what's producing your hair. So at the end of that follicle, those are stem cells in there that are just continuously popping out hair, popping out hair, popping out hair. So you have to have an area of the body that gives you those very particular things. And right now, the only way to do that is to pull those groups of stem cells from those follicular units. That's why we call it a follicular unit transfer or follicular unit extraction.
So
without
you just
extracting hair.
Go in the back there and pull the whole follicle out and then just replace it. That's
Absolutely. That is essentially what we're doing. And if you think about it, think about the old men that you see that have lost almost all of their hair. They have that one little strip, right? That one little strip right there. Well, for whatever reason, that's the way God created us. That's where our little strip is. Of hair that's always going to be there. So by taking that, we're taking hair and we know it's going to be very, very, very healthy growing hair. And that's the premise behind the hair transplant.
So, okay, if you do like 2,000 transplant, does all of the follicles integrate? Like, do you lose some?
Great question. What we typically expect is to have about a 90 to 95% survival rate. Okay,
wow.
So as you know, everything doesn't. Sometimes there's some things that happen, but traditionally you should have about a 90 to 95% survival rate. How that can change is if a doctor decides to try to do too many. So we don't do more than 3,500 follicular units at a time. That's the most that we're going to do in one setting, because all of the literature shows, and you know me, I'm all about the science. I was the same way during the pandemic. All the literature shows that if you go too far, you do too many, they're out of this body for too long, and the survivability just drops off. And that's not what you want. So to get that 90 to 95%, you want to limit the amount you're taking during the surgery. And we found that number based on not only our own experience, but based on the literature to probably be around 3,500 follicular units.
So after you get those 3,500, how long do you have to wait to get more? Like if you're missing more hair?
Right. So let's answer that in two parts. First, how long does it take for those hairs to actually start growing? Okay. So when we transplant them, they grow a little bit, but then the hair shafts fall out. Then it takes actually a couple of months for those newly planted follicular units. Remember, those are the stem cells that we planted. So it takes a while for them to communicate, for them to grow, to get their new blood supply, their new nerve supply. It takes a while for that to happen and for them to shift over into what we call the anagen growth phase. That typically takes 3 months or so. So when we do the transplant, we really don't see hair growing completely and starting to grow continuously until about between 3 to 5 months. We tell everyone 2 to 6 months.
That's it. Just like implants. When we place the implants, they have to integrate for 3 months. Yes, for the blood supply and everything. Yes. So y'all have payment plans?
Absolutely. So we have a number of ways. Now, that is a good point and a good question. A lot of patients ask, how do I take care of this? How do I pay for this? And so some patients pay in cash, some patients pay credit. This is considered aesthetic, and so it's not covered by insurance, okay? But we do have payment plans. We use companies like Cherry to do financing. We can also use Care Credit. So Care Credit is available as well. And then we have other payment plans like Alpheon and PatientFi. These are all different ways that patients can get financing so that they can have this procedure done. We actually call it, get your hair now, pay later. And so the financing will allow them to do that.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of any other questions I have. Okay, you get the implants. It takes about 3 to 4 months for it to integrate and your hair to start growing. You can only do 35 implants at a time, or transfers, or what you call them?
3,500 follicular units. Yeah.
Units at a time. Okay, so the first step is calling your office, right? Getting a consultation. You can do that virtually, correct?
Absolutely. We do virtual consultations all the time. You'll meet with me. We'll talk. We'll go through everything. We'll discuss everything, answer all the questions that you might have. What's the process like the day of, the day after, for the next week, next month, the next 3 months, etc. Yeah.
Okay, then I get an appointment. I fly in. How long does the procedure actually take?
Great question. So, what we tell every patient is if you're flying in, we need you here for at least 3 days.
3 days.
Okay. You need to be here the day before, pick up your medicine and get settled at wherever you're staying. The morning of, we get started early. Patients come in about 5:45. We get started around 6 o'clock or so. Okay. And then that procedure that day lasts anywhere from 8 to possibly 12 hours, depending on how many grafts you're getting done.
Wow.
It's a long time. It's a long time. But what we do is we are comfortable the entire time. We give you medication, so it's not done under general anesthesia. Okay, it's all done under local anesthesia.
Okay, you
And
give them
so,
Valium or something. What's the medication? Valium.
exactly. So we give them Valium to start them off, just to take them a nap, and then we're just using combination of bupivacaine and lidocaine around to create a ring block of anesthesia. So we got local anesthesia there, and then we're giving something just like Valium to kind of make them sleepy, but they're never induced completely, and so they're not
Okay.
even under really like serious conscious sedation or anything, and
And
so
then you give them like an antibiotic, correct?
they're going to get an antibiotic. They're going to get a steroid. They're going to get a pain medication. They're going to get all of these as part of the procedure.
How much discomfort should people expect?
So for us, and this is a question that a lot of patients ask,
Of
I
course.
do my best to have as little discomfort as possible. Okay, the process of putting in the needles, and we use very small, as you know, 32 gauge, 30 gauge needles to inject the anesthesia. That process is probably the only discomfort that patients are going to achieve the day of. We also accompany that with nitric oxide, and as you know, we hear some of the funniest things in the world when people are on the nitric oxide, but that significantly reduces their, even understanding or feeling of pain or perception of pain. And so that's the most. After that, the next day, patients will sometimes endorse a little bit of a headache, right? And so that's why we give them, Tylenol, ibuprofen. They'll have Norco. They usually don't need that at all, not when we do our procedures. But that's about the extent of it. And by a couple of days, there's not a lot of pain. Now that's for patients who undergo the follicular unit extraction. There's another type of procedure called the strip method, where they actually cut a strip of skin out of the back of the head. That skin contains all of those hairs there. So we take that strip of skin, we cut that out, we sew the head back together here, and then under a microscope we remove all of those small hairs. That procedure takes a little bit longer for recovery. Patients are probably in a little bit of pain for about a week or so, okay? Because it's just like basically having a laceration on your hand and getting it sewn back up. It takes a while for that to heal. So it's very similar to that.
That's not too bad. That's not too bad. Minimal discomfort. You're saying the procedure takes about 8 hours, but you under the influence of Valium, so you chilling. You kind of high, if lack of a better word. We got finance. You got Cherry. You got Alpha. What happened? You hear
Uh-oh,
me?
we were going in and out. I can hear you now. Yeah, it was going in
Yeah,
and
I don't
out,
know
but I
what
got you
happened.
now. I got you
Okay,
now.
I don't know what that was. Okay, so we got Cherry on, we got Alpheon. I mean, we got Cherry, we got Alpheon, we got Linden Club, we got Care Credit, all those. So
So,
basically, the same thing with dentistry. You come in, we give you your medication. We got your pain pills, and you put topical on first, and then you numb them up, right?
yep, yep.
And then
So,
it takes about 8 hours, long procedure. So you have multiple procedures going on at the same time, or you just do one a day, or
so
how does it go?
yeah. So right now we're just doing one a
Mm.
day. I usually will only want one surgery a day. I might have follow-ups in the other room.
Mm-hmm.
I might have small little like we do
I don't know
other
why my
procedures.
internet messing up like this. I don't know. Uh-huh.
No worries.
I don't
Can
know
you
what
hear
that
me?
is. My internet is shit. Are you
Uh-oh,
there?
no worries. Yep, I can
Okay.
hear you. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. And one surgery a day, and then but I might have in the other room a follow up appointment. I might have where we do injectables, so like PRP or exosome injectables, which are basically concentrated growth factors. I might have a patient coming in for that, or I might have consultations. But I'm continuously checking in while my staff is finishing up when it comes to some of the extractions and the implantations. So there's a whole team. There's
Yeah.
4 of us that are working at any given time.
Oh, cool, cool, cool. I'm trying to think, do I have any other questions? You come in, you get your consultation. Is there any medical contraindication, diabetes or anything like that to keep it from healing and growing right?
Great question. We want to know that information. There are some situations we probably tell a patient we want to get under control. If you're a patient with diabetes and your hemoglobin A1C is very far out of whack, then we probably would want you to hold off until you can get that under control. Out of whack meaning if you're if you're above 9, that's probably not ideal. And as you know, that's not going to be ideal for either wound healing. It's not going to be ideal in terms of nerve supply. So they just won't have as good of a response. Mainly the grafts won't take as well, right? And so for those are patients we would definitely hold off on. But beyond that, there's not a lot of contraindications when it comes to medical disorders. Again, and we don't have to do a full, because they're not undergoing general anesthesia, it's not considered, even a medium risk. It's not a high risk. It's not immediate risk. It's a very, very low risk procedure. And so it's much easier to get medically cleared.
Okay, so I go to Crown Hair Institute on Instagram and I can see some before and after pictures,
You
correct?
can see some before and after pictures. You can do you'll see some testimonials. You'll hear people talking about their experience. There are some folks that were a little worried at first, and then they were just like, this is like the best thing that I just wish I would have found you guys sooner. So absolutely.
That's pretty good. So I'm trying to think of any other questions and I don't have any. What's your phone number?
All right. Our phone number is 323 947 2126.
26. Okay. So okay, let's get into the business of it. What do you do to market your business? How did you came into this, but a guy? So I'm assuming you got a partner, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my business partner is Dr. Carl Truesdale. He is probably one of the fastest growing facial plastic surgeons in the country right now. Um, and absolutely. And so he does some of the surgeries. I do the majority of it. If there's a situation like eyebrow implants that some people do, he'll do those. If it's a full hairline lowering, which is a very complicated procedure, that's a very plastic surgery type procedure, he'll do those. Beyond that, I'm doing 95% of everything else. But basically, he started it out. So he started it out marketing using his business and using his marketers. And then he, went viral on Instagram. And so he doesn't have a marketing team anymore. And so right now, a lot of what we're doing is organic. So part of it is organic traffic from TikTok, from social media, Instagram, etc. I have a small campaign that's running locally right now where we're primarily looking at individuals that are interested in we call it a hair reboot package, where they can come in, they can get an biotin injection, they get a free scalp analysis, free diagnosis, they get a healthy hair meal plan, and they get a red light therapy treatment. And so all of that is a value, it's a $700 value they get for $97. So that's a special that we run to basically for anyone that is experiencing hair loss, to start them out on that journey and understand, hey, these are your options in terms of the non-surgical approaches, and then these are your options when it comes to surgical approach. And then we get them started on that journey that way. And so that campaign has been very successful. And right now I am in the midst, I have 9 companies that I just interviewed, and we're getting in the midst of finalizing our real big marketing company that we're going to go with, because we wanted to wait until launch until we were ready to do that. Meaning, we now have 2 facilities. So we have the 3rd floor is where my business partner primarily works. My facility that I'm in right now is about 2,500 square feet right here on the 2nd floor, right at 150 South Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, California. We have a full accredited operating room here as well. And then we have 2 procedure rooms. This is where we sell a lot of our merchandise out of. And so we're ready now for the volume that we know is about to come. And the volume has been, as people have gotten the word to understand that we're pretty much one of the only specialists for curly hair in America that specializes in traction alopecia and bringing edges back. It's been pretty busy already. So we know it's going to go crazy once we launch this marketing campaign.
Well, I'm really proud of you, my brother. I always knew you were gonna do great things. I guess my last question would be: is if the people are missing their edges on the side like we do, is how many units is that usually about?
Great question. If it's pretty extensive and they need both, sometimes they need the actual hairline here filled in as
Mm-hmm.
well as kind of that triangle that you see on the side. And that's going to typically take up the entire 3,500
Oh,
grafts, the most we can do. Usually for this, we're going to do between 2,500 and 3,500 because the
okay.
more grafts you can do, the more you tightly pack them in, the
The thick
more
hair.
dense the response is going to be and the more natural it's going to look. And what you don't want us to do is to have the procedure and it still look like it's thinning a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we do that and when we have the correct graft number, the results are just absolutely remarkable.
And the hair can grow as long as man.
The hair will grow as long as yours. It'll grow just as long as it was growing in the back of the head. You can cut it, you can style it, you can trim it. It's your hair. It's not fake hair. It's not, we don't get it from anywhere else. This is your hair. We're just borrowing from some
Can you
areas
do
and putting into another area.
eyelashes? Eyelashes.
That's another procedure that only my business partner will do. Yes. So
See,
we,
I
we
would
do
love to have thick eyelashes that you don't have to put them on anymore. Y'all do that? I'm flying in to get that done.
100%. My business partner is the one that does
How much
eyelashes.
it cost me?
If you want to do eyelashes, that's about
Yeah,
15,000.
that
15,000.
ain't that bad. Honestly, that's
Oh,
that's worth it. If I get my eyelashes like this and I don't never have to mess with them no more.
you'll never have to touch them again.
See, and I was kind of joking, actually. I didn't think you did eyelashes. I know
Yeah,
people do the eyebrows, but the eyebrows,
we
I can color those in. But
we
the
do
eyelashes,
eyelashes, eyebrows, goatees, and beards. And so we have a couple of brothers
so
on there.
those that don't get that quite connection there, you can go ahead and put some follicles there to close it up and then trim it, and then it looks perfect. Got it?
There are some individuals that have no hair. Like I call it the Jay-Z phenomenon. Jay-Z has never had a beard. He's never been able
Mm,
to grow. There's some
mm,
men who just naturally grew that way. And
mm,
so if you look for everyone that's watching, if you go on Crown Hair Institute, you'll see a gentleman and he was very similar to that. He came to us and this was just saying, I just want a goatee. I just want a goatee. He had a mustache and he had a little small bit here, but he was never able to have anything going down. So we did the
mm.
goatee first. Once he saw how that came in, he was like, no, 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 I want a full beard. He came back for a second procedure, and now he has a full beard. And if you look at it, you would never know that he wasn't born that way. And that's the goal, is for it to come out looking just that natural.
Wow, wow, wow. So, okay, so I'm trying to think. Nothing else. I think you covered everything. Anything else you need to tell me about my hair when I come in for my hair transplant?
No,
I got
honestly,
hair though. My hair, I don't have that problem. But I'm saying,
no,
but
no, 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 no. You good.
telling you that, and I don't know what the contraindications wouldn't be any kind of nerve damage to your eyelashes, correct?
No, it's usually not. It's usually much less for that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a shorter procedure, but it's just fun again that you want to have a trained plastic surgeon doing. So my partner will be the one that will be doing that.
And
And
he
there's
would get
not
the
a whole lot.
follicles from there. He would get them out of my head, the follicles.
You don't want the hair to grow out of your head. So we're very particular about where we choose those. We actually want some possibly like the napes of the neck, right? So you
For my
want to
eyelash.
choose exactly because you don't want eyelashes growing the length of your hair, right? Like you don't
No,
want that thing.
no, I don't.
And
I don't.
that's what they will do because those are the stem cells. They don't
Mm-hmm.
take on the characteristics of the hair where they go. They take
Mm,
on the characteristics of where they pulled from. So
mm,
that's why a lot of some of the eyebrow transplants, if they're not done correctly, they can come out looking very bad. Eyebrows are very complicated. So are eyelashes, which is why my board certified plastic surgeon, facial plastic surgeon partner is the one that does that. But we want to take hairs that are naturally what we call miniaturized hairs so that they're not going to grow like your head hair because it's
yeah, the little
actually a
baby hair,
different
the little
texture.
napkins back here. That's what you want.
The smaller ones, you want to have the little smaller ones, and then you can curl them, you can do whatever you want to do to them. They're going to grow out how you want to have them grow out. Yep.
Well, is there anything else that I missed? I think I asked everything. Anything else? I got the financing, I got the amount, I got the where it goes, how it's done, the procedure, how long.
Listen, you know this better than anyone, Doc. I try to tell everyone, and I try to be as honest as possible. The last thing I would tell them is they want to come right now because yesterday's price is not it's not today's price,
I know
and
that's
we are very fastly becoming one of the fastest growing hair restoration businesses in the country because of what we're specializing in. It's a niche that no one else is touching. It's a niche that no one else has perfected the way that we have, And so you do not need to go to Turkey to get your hair transplant. You can come right here to Beverly Hills, enjoy the LA weather for a couple of days, and get your hair transplant done for individuals that look just like you.
I know that's right. Well, praise God. It's always a pleasure, Doctor. Tell Shanique I said hello. We're going to
Will
the
do.
crownhairinstitute.com at Crown Hair Institute for before and after pictures. Guys, I appreciate you guys. And we bring just the knowledge to you of different things that are available for our people. And we appreciate everything you do. Now, last but not least, who do we need to vote for?
So as I did during the pandemic, I typically try to stay out of politics. Right now, there is a very clear individual that I think is the person for the people. And they
Uh-oh. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah.
they have the best interest of the people at mind, and I think that's the person that folks should vote for.
Absolutely. The main thing is that you vote because a lot of people suffer, bled, and died for that right. So, guys, get out there and vote. Thank you, Dr.
Absolutely.
Drummond. It's always good to see you. Tell your wife I said hello, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Heavenly. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. See you later.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye. Mm-hmm.